breaking news out of New York City as police are searching for a gunman.
He ignores numerous other pedestrians, approaches the victim from behind, and shoots him in the back.
The person has been taken into custody in Altoona, Pennsylvania in connection to the CEO shooting.
On December 4th, 2024, a man in a dark coat stepped onto a Manhattan sidewalk, pulled a handgun, and fired 3 rounds into the back of one of the most powerful men in American healthcare. Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare's $260 billion insurance empire, collapsed just outside the New York Hilton, where he was scheduled to speak at an investor event.
A major update to breaking news this morning. We now know the man fatally shot outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson.
Within minutes, paramedics rushed him to Mount Sinai. He never made it. Police called it a targeted act, but on social media, it exploded into something else. Because this wasn't just about a CEO getting shot. This was about a system millions had grown to despise. One that denies coverage, delays life-saving care, and racks up record profits while everyday Americans drown in medical debt. The suspect, Luigi Mangione, was caught days later. But by then, number Free Luigi was already trending worldwide. TikToks of denied cancer claims, Reddit threads with screenshots of 12,000 ER bills, tweets calling him a hero. To some, he was a killer, but to others, he was a symbol. And what followed wasn't just a media frenzy, it was a full-blown corporate collapse. Because within weeks, UnitedHealth would face a ransomware attack that froze its systems, a federal investigation into Medicare fraud, billions in lawsuits, a stock crash that erased over $230 billion in market value, and public outrage that no crisis PR team could silence. But to understand how America's most powerful healthcare company crumbled in real time and why millions saw it coming, we need to rewind the tape. On the morning of February 21st, 2024, a silent ripple hit the American healthcare system, and within hours, it turned into a tidal wave. Hospitals started reporting strange outages. Pharmacies couldn't refill prescriptions. Claims processors were getting error messages. Then the truth hit: Change Healthcare, a UnitedHealth-owned company responsible for processing billions of insurance transactions, had been hacked. The attackers were part of ALPHV, a notorious ransomware gang also known as Black Cat. They didn't just take a few files. They went for the jugular. In a single coordinated breach, ALPHV locked down systems handling medical claims, pharmacy billing, prior authorizations, payment reconciliation, and imaging records across all 50 states. 1 in every 3 patient records in the US passed through Change Healthcare. That meant this wasn't just an outage. It was a shutdown of the US healthcare economy. UnitedHealth quickly realized how bad it was. They paid $22 million in Bitcoin to the hackers, hoping to regain control. But by then, the damage was already done. Pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS had to revert to paper. Hospital billing systems crashed. Veterans Administration hospitals reported outages. TRICARE, the insurance plan for U.S. military service members, issued emergency backup protocols. Doctors reported patients going days without insulin, seizure meds, or chemotherapy refills. Some pharmacies started giving away meds for free, just to keep people alive. Others told patients to pay cash, if they had it. By early March, UnitedHealth admitted the breach had compromised the data of millions, later estimating the exposure could touch up to 1 in 2 Americans. 6 terabytes of data had been stolen. That included names, social security numbers, insurance IDs, treatment histories, and financial records. Congress demanded answers. UnitedHealth's CEO was dragged into hearings. Lawsuits poured in. But while the nation scrambled to patch the fallout from the hack, investigators at the Department of Justice were already working on something else. Something that had been bubbling just beneath the surface for years. While UnitedHealth scrambled to patch the chaos from the cyber attack, a deeper rot was surfacing, one that had been quietly inflating the company's profits for years. It all centered around Medicare Advantage. On the surface, it looked like a win-win. The government pays private insurers like UnitedHealth a fixed fee to manage senior healthcare. The sicker the patients, the more money the insurer gets. It's called risk adjustment. But behind the scenes, UnitedHealth had figured out how to exploit that system. Internal teams were digging through old patient records looking for anything: a past illness, an outdated note, even a borderline diagnosis, to bump up a patient's risk score, even if it had resolved years ago. Even if the patient was never treated, if it could be coded, it could be billed. It wasn't a rogue act. It was institutionalized. Algorithms flagged opportunities. Risk scores rose. Medicare payouts followed. In 2021 alone, UnitedHealth collected over $8 billion in extra revenue from these inflated risk scores. That single move represented more than half the company's net income. By 2025, the Department of Justice had seen enough. Federal prosecutors opened a case under the False Claims Act, a law designed to punish fraud against the government. UnitedHealth faced the possibility of owing triple the overpayments. The math was simple. The bill could hit $20 billion. At the same time, state regulators began digging into how this data-driven coding was being used, and whether it was crossing legal lines. Inside the company, panic was setting in. But outside the company, the public wasn't focused on balance sheets or audit trails. They were focused on something else, or rather, someone else. As UnitedHealth grew into the most powerful healthcare company in America, it didn't just rely on doctors or administrators to make decisions. It relied on algorithms. These tools weren't just analyzing data. They were helping determine who got care and who didn't. In Medicare Advantage plans, AI-based software was being used to predict how long a patient should remain in rehab or recovery, not based on doctor recommendations, based on patterns. If a patient exceeded the suggested window, claims were flagged. Often they were denied. Appeals were difficult, confusing, time to expire quickly. For most families, the system felt impossible to navigate. By 2024, watchdog groups discovered that nearly 90% of these denials were reversed when challenged, proof that the system was rejecting valid claims by default. But most patients never made it that far, and the longer these tools stayed in place, the more they expanded. Mental health care, home health, even emergency procedures. It wasn't personal. It was scalable, efficient, and profitable. But for the people caught in the middle, the ones being told they couldn't stay in rehab, couldn't refill a medication, couldn't get follow-up care, it felt like the system had quietly automated cruelty. UnitedHealth claimed these tools were just recommendations, but leaked documents painted a different picture. Staff were trained to trust the system, not to challenge it. And when stories of denied treatment began flooding social media, public sentiment shifted. This wasn't innovation. This was infrastructure weaponized. By mid-2025, UnitedHealth's house of cards was collapsing. The cyber attack, the fraud investigation, the AI backlash, all of it piled on. The stock tanked from $610 down to under $308. Over $230 billion in market value erased. It became the worst performer in the entire S&P 500. Investors panicked. Analysts downgraded. The board made a desperate move. CEO Andrew Whitty stepped down. The official story was personal reasons. Insiders knew it was the pressure. To steady the ship, the board brought back former CEO Stephen Hemsley, but it wasn't enough. Lawsuits skyrocketed. Class actions, provider lawsuits, state probes, DOJ subpoenas. Internally, UnitedHealth began offering buyouts. Employees were told not to wear badges in public. Morale collapsed. And through it all, one name kept surfacing online, louder than any press release or investor call. Luigi Mangione. What started as a shocking crime turned into something else entirely. Online, Luigi Mangione wasn't called a murderer. He was called a symbol. Stories of denied care, lost family members, and financial ruin flooded social media. Millions of Americans saw in Luigi something they'd never seen in a corporate executive. Accountability. Free Luigi trended for weeks. Posts about denied treatments reached millions of views. Patient testimonials stitched together into montages of despair and rage. The narrative wasn't controlled by UnitedHealth anymore. It was controlled by the internet. Podcasts picked up the manifesto Luigi left behind. Public sentiment shifted. A national poll found that more than half of respondents felt his actions were morally understandable. For a company already drowning in scandal, this wasn't just another PR crisis, it was an existential one. By the end of 2025, calls to break up UnitedHealth were no longer whispers. They were headlines. Investors wanted a spin-off. Lawmakers wanted an inquiry. The FTC launched an antitrust probe. The DOJ expanded its case. Optum, UnitedHealthcare, behavioral health, pharmacy benefits, all under scrutiny. The company quietly began laying off thousands. At the same time, internal documents hinted at a strategy of reputational rebuild through selective divestment. In plain terms, they were preparing to sell off parts of the empire. But the public wasn't just watching. They were organizing. Advocacy groups, legal funds, investigative journalists, healthcare workers. The system UnitedHealth had built and dominated was unraveling in real time. And the question people began asking wasn't how to fix the company. It was whether the model itself ever worked at all. UnitedHealth didn't fall because of one hacker, or one lawsuit, or even one bullet. It fell because it lost the one thing every healthcare company needs to survive: trust. Trust that care would come before cost, that the system wasn't quietly optimizing against you, that the decisions about your body weren't being made by a spreadsheet. For decades, UnitedHealth mastered the art of invisibility. It became the middleman behind the middleman, a company you never saw, but that saw everything about you: your records, your treatments, your worth. But in 2024, the illusion cracked. And by 2025, it shattered. Because when the systems failed, and the people spoke, and the numbers stopped adding up, the truth came out. This wasn't just about one company. It was about what happens when profit becomes policy, and patients become products. Now, UnitedHealth stands where so many giants have stood before. Too slow to change, too powerful to pivot, and too late to realize the world had moved on. The empire didn't fall in a day. It fell piece by piece, quietly, then all at once. And for millions of Americans, the question left behind isn't how UnitedHealth collapsed. It's how it was allowed to rise this far in the first place.